Hi, and welcome back to another edition of The Journey with Joe. I want to give a special shout out to the Camp Transforation Center, Anaheim, and Ontario Ranch. Make sure you get your fitness on in the new year. They'll take care of you. I am super pumped and excited to have my boy, Andrew Cruz here, Marine Corps veteran, amazing entrepreneur, fitness guru, great dad. I see girl dad out there. Just one of the kindest, most humblest, genuine guys I've come to know. And so, Andrew, thanks for coming on down, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Joe. I appreciate you inviting me out and also the hospitality from the car wash and just this nice setup. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I remember I first met you back in 2015, and you were buying a house and getting a loan, and I remember you were on recruiting duty, and so you had this crazy recruiting schedule, right? Like recruiting schedule is insane.
Hectic.
And I remember that you had a side business, and I thought to myself, as a guy who's been in this business a long time, I thought I don't meet many people who are in service who also have a side hustle, right? And I thought that was real unique, and that was back in 2015 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And now fast forward, and man, there's nothing that could stop you, right? It's the ATMs and the photo booths and the gyms and just all the stuff that you're doing, and it's crazy, right? It's amazing, and it's beautiful to see. I love to see all the growth and all the hard work that you're putting into it. I love that you show a lot of the hard work. So we're going to talk about all of that, right? Because I think a lot of people complain there's not enough time, right? I can't do it all, right? But here's proof that he's got the same amount of time as everybody else, and he's got his hands in a lot of different businesses. And you know, I think you're probably really good at putting your hand in when you need it and not being all in and giving up some control. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's talk about getting started. Tell me a little bit about growing up. How'd you wind up in the Marine Corps? Because, I think I heard a little bit about that, but what led you to go into the Marine Corps and why go that route?
Marine Corps, that set the tone for a lot of the things that I've done in my life. And I would say the biggest proponent to how I ended up in the Marine Corps was my mother. Yep. She was the antagonist. I'd say growing up, I knew I was bright. I wouldn't consider myself dumb, but pretty lazy in the sense of like academia. I was never really interested with homework. And my mom was born and raised in Costa Rica, so I'm first generation here. Nice. And education has always been very, very important for her. So when I was coming towards the end of high school, she pretty much gave me an ultimatum. Yep. And it was, you're going to go to college or you're going to go to the military. You pick.
Wow.
And I was a procrastinator in both. Didn't take my SATs, wasn't necessarily applying for FAFSA or college for that matter. Yep. And I was just kicking the can down the road. I told her I was going to go to the military, and then she held the line on getting me to speak to a recruiter.
She took you to the recruiter?
She had a recruiter come to the house. Yeah.
Wow.
So she had
gangster Costa Rican mom.
Yeah, and the irony is that Costa Rica has no military.
Oh, really?
So it's a sovereign nation protected by America, and when you have no real knowledge of military, first thing you think of is Army. Yeah. And so there was an Army recruiter that had come to the house. I listened to what they had to say, and it sounded amazing. I had a buddy of mine that was a senior with me. We were both graduating. He had a cousin that was in the Marine Corps. I told my buddy Matt that I was looking at joining the Army. He was considering the Marine Corps. He had a cousin that was in the Marines. Yeah. And that's how we ended up going to the Marine Corps office.
Really?
Yep.
And you went into the Marine Corps office, and you were just like, yeah, like this feels like home?
Well, so when I listened to the Army, all of the benefits sounded really cool.
Yeah.
And when we went to the Marine Corps office, I realized that a lot of those same benefits were the same in the Marine Corps, but where it was different is the Marine Corps had like this cool factor to it.
Really?
And where from the title, the marketing, the uniforms,
Yep.
the appearance of the recruiters, the way they carried themselves, their humor, their athleticism or perceived athleticism.
Yep.
I think the cool factor captured me, and I moved in that direction. It was the cool factor.
Yeah. And so how long were you in the Marines?
I would say total about 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah, total about 18 years. And fun fact or side note, the Upland facility that I'm going to open in early 2023 is in the same parking lot plaza as the Marine Corps recruiting office that I joined.
Really?
Out of, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's
full
nostalgic.
circle. Yeah, dude, that's so cool. That's really wild. So you're in the Marine Corps, you're young, you're going through the process, and did you get sent to other areas, or did you have orders to go to other places, or were you mostly in Southern Cal?
So my first 4 years were in North Carolina.
Okay.
The original intention was to do 4 years, get out, just do 4 years, get out, and pursue law enforcement. I think I originally wanted to do law enforcement, and having a background in military was a good foundation for that. While I was in my first 4 years of enlistment, I ended up going on a MU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit. So it's essentially a mini Marine Corps, all of the different elements on board Navy ships, and the whole purpose behind a MU with the Marine Corps, they have the Marines and the Navy. They have these ships going out at the same time from the east and west coast, and they circle up in the Persian Gulf. Okay. So as ships are leaving, ships are making their way back to America. So there is always an American presence somewhere in the world where we can get there, let's say in 72 hours. Oh, wow. So the purpose behind the MU is to, one, either provide a humanitarian support to a natural disaster somewhere, or to provide supplemental troops somewhere in the world if the president deems it.
Oh, wow.
So I went on one of those towards the end of my first enlistment. It turned out to be like a military-esque carnival cruise.
Oh, really?
Mainly because we didn't end up in Iraq.
Oh, wow.
We just traveled with the Navy. We hit different ports. The ports were pretty cool. I got to visit 5 different countries.
Nice.
We went to Sicily, Turkey, Dubai, Bahrain, and then Spain on the way back. Each country was about 5 days.
Wow, that's
all
cool.
Expense paid for.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, you're young. It's it's good time to do it. Right?
It was a great experience. I was 21 at the time. Living on a Navy ship sucks. It's not comfortable. You sleep in a cabin, like a coffin-like bed.
Right. I've seen those. Those look terrible.
But I felt fulfilled in the sense of I joined the Marine Corps. I wanted to make sure that I went on one deployment before my 4 years expired. I was next in the rotation to go on a deployment, and just so happens that's just the way the cookie crumbled, and I ended up going on one of those.
Yeah.
And then that was really the one and only deployment, because once I re-enlisted and I transferred to San Diego. I was in San Diego for about 3 years, and then I went into the recruiting environment, and I ended up simply staying in the recruiting environment.
Really?
And recruiters don't deploy.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So you were in recruiting for a while.
Yep.
Interesting. You learn a lot in recruiting, right? Like there's
a lot.
If you're like, sales is all about rejection, right?
Yep.
I can imagine that as a recruiter, the rejection is like 100 times higher.
It's high.
Right?
It's high. I would say being a military recruiter is like a door-to-door salesman.
Yeah.
We do get some warm leads, and there's some good opportunity to get in front of a warmer market.
Yep.
But for the most part, it's a cold market, and you definitely learn a lot of how to handle no.
Yep.
Or you don't learn how to handle no. and it's apparent.
Yeah.
But I would say that one of the biggest takeaways from my time in the Marine Corps, as a skill that I value high would be the ability to communicate effectively and listen and understand and ask questions and assume nothing. And a lot of that stems from the recruiting environment.
Yeah. I would say that recruiting environment's got to be insane, right? Just dealing with that. And so one of the things that I've, in talking to other recruiters, you have like a quota or target or a mission.
Correct.
Right? And you have to hit that.
Yep.
And if you don't hit it,
quality of life sucks.
Quality of life sucks. Right? Like it's not, what I'm getting to is it's not optional.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is the mission.
Yep.
Right? And this is what we have to do. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yep.
This is what we're going to go to. Right? And it's
figure it out.
Figure it out. Right? It's full throttle. 150,000% to make sure you hit your mission by the date that you have to hit it.
Yep. 100%. And it's, the recruiting environment is high stress. It's high tempo. There's a lot of moving parts. Attention to detail is critical.
Yeah.
And in that same light, you got what most people in the military are, I would say, are introverts. We're not, and if they are chatty Cathys or have a silver tongue, it isn't necessarily with direction, or there isn't a purpose behind that conversation. So there's a lot of great storytellers, and then there's a lot of people that just recluse and don't want to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
But you have to figure out how you're going to maneuver and navigate through this 3-year tour, or life is going to be terrible. And this is where the term "bloom where you're planted" really it really makes sense in that environment. But the recruiter plays the role of like three different people. I would say it's like the sales guy, contracting, and then customer service on the back end. Because once someone contracts into the program, they're yours for the next 5, 6, 7 months.
Oh wow!
So you must take care of the sale after the sale, because if they attrit and don't go to boot camp, you have to replace them.
Yeah. Wow. So you have to nurture and stay with that person until they go to boot camp.
Right. In comparison to the private sector, where a sales guy is a sales guy, and then service is service. And when service has a complaint from a customer and talks to the sales guy, it's like, well, sounds like it's a service problem. Why are you talking to me?
Yeah. That's how you can't do that in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. You are sales, you are service, you are contracting, you're all of it. You're all of the above, and you got to knock it all out in the same period of work day as anyone else.
Yep. And I think that's so interesting to have that mindset, right? Because I think in my line of work, in loans and in real estate, I think so many people think that things are optional, right? And what I've learned, especially this year as the market's gotten tougher, is there's no optional, right? Like you got to show up every day. You got to bring your A game every single day. And if you don't, somebody else is, right? And they're going to beat you, and you don't want to lose, right? Like if you're very competitive like me, you don't want to lose. But you have to bring your A game every single day.
100%.
And otherwise, you lose the day, and you only get a certain number of those days, right? The days are numbered, so you can't lose the day. So I think that's interesting. And so a lot of what you got from the Marine Corps, you've taken with you into all the businesses and life experiences that you've had. So how did you start on this road of entrepreneurship, right? I think you started with ATMs.
ATMs, yeah.
Right? And so did the ATM things while you were still in the Marine Corps?
Yeah. So I started the ATMs in 2014, and the idea came from this guy, Kevin, who was also in the Marine Corps. Oh. And he was always pretty like outside of the box thinker. He was the guy who I replaced in the recruiting office, and I had kept in contact with him. And I think a year or like 2 years after I had already been in the recruiting environment, he had told me about him having a ATM and a cash only barbershop in San Clemente, and how it was crushing it. And I asked questions. I'm like, oh, dude, tell me more.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this, and I want to learn about it. And through that's where I got the idea. And in that sense, it's like a vending machine, but cash, right? And I got an understanding of how he got his placement of the ATM. So I just simply took a look at, okay, Google, where to buy ATM.
Yeah.
And then once I found out where to buy ATM, how much it costs, and then who does the actual processing through the network with the banking thing, it happens to be the same company who sells you the ATMs.
Yeah.
And so from there, it was applying the same basic fundamentals that I learned in the recruiting environment. And it was create a list, prospect the list, engage with the decision maker, which would be the owner of the barbershop, present to them what we have, and then ask for the yes. And then it was just wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into the ATM business. It was low risk because if the location sucks, I can pull the machine and then just move it. So when purchasing the machine, it was less scary because I wasn't going to lose money because it was an asset. And if the asset didn't perform well in that location, I could simply just move it and try again.
Gotcha.
But the sales process, it was just a wash, rinse, repeat, and that's where that started.
Old school, right? Make a list.
Yeah.
Get the names and numbers. Call them. Ask for the business, right? Have a conversation.
Yep.
Build some rapport. Ask for the business, right? I mean, it's like sales 101.
Yeah.
Right. It's
exactly.
Got to keep doing it. Rinse and repeat, right? I think that was key what you said, because you just kept doing it, right?
Yeah.
You talked to some shop owners who are like, yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Next call, right? And I think you just become, for me, sometimes I feel a little bit robotic where I'm just, all right, I just got to get to the next call. You told me no, but there's a yes out there somewhere.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Like I just got to go for the yes. Eventually, somebody's going to tell me yes,
yeah.
And just kind of getting through that.
Law of numbers.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to fail more often than you're going to succeed.
Yeah.
Right? I think in any type of sales environment or business, right, you're going to have a lot of failure and a lot of fall. It's just a matter of keep getting back up, right? That's the name of the game. And so you did the ATM things. And do you still do still have the ATMs?
No, I stopped doing the ATMs last summer.
Okay.
And it had just gotten to a point where it was great while I was in the Marine Corps, and it was great while I was juggling the Marine Corps ATMs and the photo booth company.
Yeah.
But once the element of the gyms came into play, the amount of time, which wasn't much, it wasn't much time that needed to be devoted to ATMs. But when COVID hit, barbershops were slaughtered.
Yeah.
Because that was an in-person service. So cash-only barbershops took a heavy hit, and they didn't necessarily, maybe they're good now, but in 2021, they weren't thriving like they were pre-COVID.
Oh.
And the amount of time that it would take me to drive to an ATM that produced $200 or $400 a month, I had bigger fish on my plate that I needed to put my focus and energy towards with the gyms, because I'd say the operating expenses with the gym are crazy numbers that I had never really seen prior to taking over the camp in Anaheim.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't have time to worry about this $300-400 thing. I got this like $30,000-$40,000 thing that I got to figure out.
For sure, yeah. and I think your goals and your time, right? What you mentioned there was time, because you have to figure out where you're going to put your time.
Yep.
Right? You only get a limited amount of it, and you're like, okay, where is my highest and best use? I say that all the time, right? But you have to put that where your highest and best use is, right? Like back in the day, your highest and best use was going and doing parties on a Saturday because you needed to get the photo booth company going, right? Now I'm guessing you're not doing many photo parties on a Saturday night, right?
No.
You're doing a quinceañera on a Saturday?
Not the Olympus is falling if I'm at an event.
Yeah, right. So, but it's time, it's leverage, is learning how to utilize, work the business, and have the business perform without you doing the actual work. Right. That's the game changer.
Yeah, that I would say that's a 100% game changer. I think the great thing about being the guy who was out there doing the do was that I know what needs to be done and how to do it. And then when navigating through the journey of entrepreneurship, it's not like opening a a game of Monopoly where, all right, well, let's just go ahead and read the instructions and see how to play this game. With doing your own thing, there is no box of instructions. There is no operating procedures. You have to navigate through that. And I didn't have a background in photo booths. I didn't have a background in photography. All I knew was very intimately was the sales process. Yeah. And then from there, I had to figure everything else out. And then the only way you figure something out in the best manner would be to do it yourself. So that's how I started the business, by doing it myself, figuring it out. Because as you elevate and you leverage other people to then do the actual work in itself, you have to be able to provide support. Yeah. When they're in a pickle and they can't figure it out themselves. Yeah. And if you don't know how to resolve it, then you're in a bigger pickle.
Then you're in a bigger pickle. Yeah. Then you're SOL big time, yeah. Right? I mean, you don't want to be in that situation. So you do the photo booth company, and that's a whole. I mean, I would imagine that's a 7-day-a-week gig, right? Or you're doing your Monday through Friday, and then you're doing that on the weekends, right? Yeah. Yep. Jeez. And
that's how it was originally. I would say like 2017, 2018, when I was doing the events myself, it was a 7-day-a-week thing. Yep. And the wild part, so my oldest daughter, Alani, she was born July 28, 2016. And I started the photo booth guy January of 2017. So I had a 6-7-month-old. Oh, wow. When I started a new venture concurrent to the recruiting environment, which is like the highest tempo, high stress, long hours. Yeah. So I started it in the midst of all that. And I feel like where it played to my benefit is that I'm conditioned to operate in a high tempo, high stress environment, and then create structure and then operate within the structure. But 2017, I did a lot of the events myself. I went from like one photo booth unit, and then I went to 2 and then 3 units. That first year, I operated with 3 photo booths. I manned one, 2 other people manned the other 2. Uh-huh. And I think that first year we had like 236 events in 2017. And then 2018, I increased from 3 units to 6 units. And through the heartache of my wife not wanting me to do so many events myself, yeah, it made me think of how can I not compromise the amount of profit or monies coming in, but also do less events myself. Yeah. So then it was simply get more units. Meet demand when we're already booked on a certain date. If I happen to get 2 hits on that for that same exact date, that means the demand is justified, and I'll buy another unit, and then I'll onboard another person. Oh wow! And then so on, and that's essentially how I then was doing more of the back office sales part, and then I eventually did none of that. But now it's like having to circle back and revisit systems and processes and operations. And in case in case there's some turnover, how can I most quickly get someone up to speed with minimizing the amount of turbulence that can occur when a key player leaves?
Yeah, you got to plug somebody right in. Yeah, I love what you said right there, right? Because you started the business, your calendar was already full, right? Like you already had a full plate. Yeah. Right? And then you said full. Like, you were already probably 6 days a week, and you just added a 7th and 8th day, basically, is what you did. Yeah. But you learned how to live in that chaos, right? And how to not just live, thrive in that chaos. Because you realized you had to be real disciplined with your time, with your structure, with where you were at and how you were spending, like who you were talking to, right? Like your recruiting calls, everything was very intentional. Yeah, I'm assuming, whether it was your recruiting calls or whether it was your sales calls for the photo booth guy or, talking to your employees, like there was laser focus during that time. So that's interesting because I think a lot of people say there's not enough hours in the day and da-da-da-da-da, but it just takes discipline and structure. I was commenting because I was like, 7 days a week, you must have the most patient wife ever. Either that or she was just like, I'm happy he's gone for the day and I can do my own thing. But that's tough, right? But you said
it was tough.
You had a coming to Jesus meeting and she's like, listen, you can't be at, this, we need you home, right? We got a baby at home. She needs you here.
Yeah, no, it truly was a challenge. And I definitely look at the friction that she provided as one of the best support pieces of the puzzle, because she forced me to rethink some things, and then I looked at what the operation was through a different lens. Yep. And that, I would say, is when I began to leverage other people's time to then have the same result. Because in the beginning, it's like, let's just say if an event's $500 and I do it myself, I can keep the $500.
Yeah.
And I wanted to maximize that. But what I wasn't necessarily thinking about was if an event is $500 and I have someone else do it, I could still capture $300 and not have done any of that, and still win. So then from there, it's just increase the volume of those $300 net profits, and then that's the
formula.
Play.
That's the formula. Yeah.
That's the play there.
And I think it's so interesting because our spouses, like my wife is wired differently than me. Sounds like your wife might be too, right? She's where it gives you some balance, right? And sometimes you need that, where they give you. You said that so nicely. She provided the friction. Kim Soto, if you listen to this, it's the nice way to say she provided the friction to get me to move towards a result, right? But you need that.
Yes.
Right? Because sometimes you're so laser focused that you just don't see it.
Yeah.
Right? And you're just so consumed in, here's the plan, here's the goal, I'm doing this, that you just lose that focus. So you need to have, is Kelly?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Kelly to whip you up, provide the necessary friction.
Yeah, I needed that necessary friction because going back to growing up, I didn't come from money. I grew up in a single parent household. My money was tight, and I think that in itself gave a certain chip on my shoulder of like wanting more. Like no one necessarily grows up and says to themselves, when I grow up, I'm gonna suck. And so it's like growing up without, you either accept that for life, and that is your truth, or you're just like, no, man, that's not my truth, and I want to figure it out. There's got to be a way to crush it in this world.
Yep.
And that was like moving in that direction.
Yeah.
And I would say that because of that friction that Kelly provided, I would say it was very valuable in my growth as a business person.
Yeah.
And it was good overall. But I know there's like some necessary evils or sacrifices that need to take place. Yeah. And the unfortunate part, or I guess the ugly side of things, is that I wasn't around a lot. And the unfortunate, like I wasn't around a lot during my older daughter Alani's younger years, from like, let's say 1 to 4.
Yeah.
Right. And now I have Kenzie, who just turned 2 this last week. And I've been around, I would probably say 10x more than I was for Alani's same time frame of life.
Yeah.
Because now I have much more calendar control. And although I wasn't necessarily so present for Alani in that same, let's say 2 to 4, 1 to 4 year range, I'm more present now. Ever since she was like 4, 5, 6, I don't miss any school events. Those are priority, and focusing on family for the weekends. But with Kenzie, I see that little girl every morning, and for the most part, I feel like I work like 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I'm typically home more so in the morning, and I capture some of the time with her during those hours. So the beautiful part about the friction, I guess, on the more back end, or not necessarily back end, but back end of my current time, is that the time that was missed, it was sort of like Alani, in that sense, during that time of life, was sacrificial to then elevate where I'm at now, or we as a collective unit. And there's still plenty of time to have a phenomenal upbringing with me more present, and I'm capturing a lot of those missed moments with Kenzie now.
Yeah. And so it's funny because I had another person I spoke to, and he said, we were talking about the most powerful words in the human language. And he was saying that, the most powerful words are I am, right? Like what you tell yourself, I am strong, I am powerful, I am this. But I firmly believe the most powerful word is daddy, right? Like you're a girl dad, you got 2 girls, right? Like for me, and I always have the conversation, don't you want a son, right? Good, I got 2 girls too, right? Like I'm in it. But there's that, you've realized early that you missed that time, you made the change, and now you're there, you want to be present. But when they say dad, is that not the best thing in the world?
I would say it's a beautiful thing. And I would say, to, I guess, supplement on what you're talking about, is dad, daddy, dada. I would say that those are the things that warm your heart and can make you melt. And in that same light, I am is what will build you up and increase your fortitude.
100%.
Right. So it's like they're both amazing words.
Yeah.
They play different roles. And I would say that one is not more important than the other.
Yeah.
But self-talk, positive self-talk, plays a huge role in what you do and what you do not do.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of what we do in life is between the ears. And again, I grew up in a poor household, right? I didn't have anybody teach me that at a young age. Going back to what you said about not having money growing up, right? Like I always felt like I had to be the one doing the work. Like when you made that analogy about the $500, I didn't grow up with $500. So to make 500, I was like, yeah, I need to make it all. And then you realize, you get it to a point in your life where you're like, yeah, that 500 isn't as important as this.
Yeah.
Or I can make it up in another way. And that just takes life lessons and learning and all of that fun stuff. So it's super interesting stuff,
100%.
We're going to take a quick break, sponsor break. Super grateful for the Camp Transformation Center, and we're going to do a little break. Are you looking for a new and exciting way to improve your fitness? Well, you have to join the Camp Transformation Centers in Anaheim and Ontario Ranch, because they are doing some special things over there. They are changing people's lives with great classes and a great environment and great instructors that are helping people lose weight, become more confident, become more healthy, and just live better overall. So if you're interested in changing your quality of life and learning more about starting a fitness journey, give the Camp Transformation Center a call, either Anaheim or Ontario Ranch, and start your journey towards a healthy and fulfilling life. They are amazing. You're going to love them. Give them a call. Now back to the show.
But I would say coming into 2023, the main thing that I'm focused on is creating better illustrated operating procedures.
Okay.
For both gym operations, the role that I play now, and also with the photo booth company, just better, more detailed operating procedures for the processes that we do. Having a successful opening or build out and opening with Upland, and I want to then create 3 to 5 online courses. So the little bit that I do know, or the amount that I do know right now about how to pivot that. It's there always has to be some sort of what's next in the whole e-learning space.
Yeah.
And then so it's taking a look at what you give for free, the freemium, right? To then capture names, numbers, email addresses, and stuff like that to build your list. And then what would be paid for content, and then where does it go from there? It's got to bleed into something, whether it's another free thing or another bonus or something like that. where does something like that end at coaching, or like whether it's like a one-on-one coaching group, or whether it's like a small group mastermind kind of thing. But the name of the game is how do you monetize what you know and bring value to other people, right? And I've heard like a lot of people will say, well, when your free stuff is better than your paid stuff, like that's pretty bananas, right?
Yeah.
But in all reality, I think you've said it before too. Information's free. It's all about the implementation.
Correct.
So from there, it's like, when having an online course, do you charge for it, or is it at a very economical price? Because the challenge there also is, if someone doesn't pay for it, they value it less.
Yeah.
So like if your parents give you a car, you're going to trash it. If you buy the car, then you're going to cherish it a little.
Take care. You're cleaning that puppy up.
Yeah, you got some skin in the game. So I haven't really figured out like the whole at what point is there monetization or anything like that. But I want to create 3 to 5 courses.
Nice.
And that's something that I'm going to work on in 2023. And I feel like it'll bring value to the other things that I'm doing as well. But it's going to be focused on 4 pillars: leadership, communication, mindset, and structure, or systems and processes.
Okay.
So I feel like in business, or how I was able to then reflect and think about, well, how did I do well with ATMs? How did I do well in the Marine Corps recruiting environment? How did I do well in the gym operation space? Having no background in ATMs, having no background in photography or event rentals, having no background in gym operations. And I narrowed it down to those 4 pillars. And once I took that blind dive into gym operations and did well there, at that point, I felt like I can go into any industry and do well anywhere.
If you apply those 4 principles.
If you apply those 4 principles. But like I felt confident about my abilities, I would say 4 months into gym operations, that like, oh, I can do anything.
I can do anything.
But it wasn't until 4 months after the first gym was like, let's say January 21. It wasn't until January 22, because 2021, that year was crazy busy, because I did a lot in a very short period of time, because I acquired Camp Anaheim August 2020. I acquired Camp Laguna January 21. And then I signed the lease for Ontario Ranch March 21. I opened Ontario Ranch November 21. So it was like the build out, going through that whole process. And then COVID restrictions peeled back in April or May of 21. So PBG Entertainment, the photo booth company, that went from like surviving to thriving, and all of that happened in that very short time frame. Mind you, Kenzie was born December 2020, so it was like 2021 was just like high tempo, hectic, really busy. And then once everything settled down in 22, I purchased the territory for Upland, and
there you go.
And which I didn't want. Like that wasn't even on my agenda to purchase another territory, but it became an opportunity that wasn't present before. So then I purchased Upland because 2021 was so hectic. I was saying to myself that 2022, I'm going to pump my brakes, chill, catch my breath, and then see how the year goes. And then as the year starts, I think it was January or February earlier this year, I hear that they're going to sell a territory adjacent to Ontario Ranch, which is Harupa Valley. Yeah. And then I was like, what? Because it seemed like there weren't any available territories. And then I guess the franchise got this mapping software that crunched all these numbers, and it says that there's a propensity to put one here and there, and then so on. So I submitted my interest, and I had the opportunity to capture Harupa Valley, but then I chose Upland I didn't know that was even an option.
Okay.
And it was like Pomona, Montclair, Upland area. But I chose that simply based off of population density.
Oh, okay.
Jurupa Valley, I think within a 3-mile radius, there's like 80,000 people. And whether it's Pomona, Montclair, Ontario, Upland, each one of those cities within a 3-mile radius have 200,000 people.
Oh, geez.
So law of numbers.
Tells
me
right?
Like between A and B, I'm going that way.
Yeah.
Why? Because there's 200,000 people there.
It's a contact sport. I need more opportunities.
100%. And out of 200,000 people, I need 500 monthly members.
Yeah.
And then that's a thriving, successful facility.
Wow.
So when comparing that's where that happened. But I was going to a networking entrepreneur event in January that my buddy EJ hosted with this other guy, Billy Anderson, with Level Up Society.
Uh-huh.
And it was on the way there. I was going there with my buddy Frank, and we were just chopping it up, talking about business. And the thought came to mind, like what were the common denominators? And I was the common denominator in that. And those were the 4 things that I could attribute that have nothing to do with either of the businesses and have to 100% to do with the individual person. So it's like those 4 pillars: leadership, communication, mindset, and structure, can be applicable to anyone in every industry, where they can grade themselves on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being whatever you feel is terrible and 10 being whatever you idolize, and self-assess, see where you're at, and then work on further developing or polishing your skill in that pillar.
Yeah.
And so when I get into the e-learning or online course, it's going to be like off the bat, that could be each one of those pillars is like one course in itself.
Totally.
And then from each one of those pillars, or each one of those pillars, it can segment, and depending on how granular you want to get, can create many other courses or content.
Yeah. That's super interesting, because I think you need to have all 4 of them, but you constantly need to be working on all of those.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're always a work in progress. At least I feel when you mention them all, I'm like, damn, I need work. I'm constantly working on all of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you always have to have that growth mindset. You have to have the willingness to learn and adapt, right? Like I liked what you said earlier about being an entrepreneur, that there's no like handbook. Right? It's not like, okay, today you're just going to follow A, B, C, and D. It's like A, W, M, Q, Z, right? Like there's no...
And then M's on fire.
Yeah, right? And then M's on fire, right? You're like, oh, man. Yeah, and it's just always chaos. And so for me, one of the things that really helped me was learning from other people.
Yeah.
Right? Learning from other people's mistakes. Because I felt like my learning curve would be like this, right? But if I had somebody, it was a shorter path, right? So talk to me a little bit about some of the mentors and people you've had in your life, maybe from the military or from when you got out, people that have helped you, and kind of what have they done for you?
Yeah, 100%. I would say the utmost game changer in my life was meeting Sam Bakhtiar. Mm-hmm. He was a co-founder of the Camp Transforation Center. And what I would say, it's not necessarily that he taught me anything new, but what he really showed me was what is possible. And through the relationship that I had with the guy, because it's funny, like how we met was a totally different story, but I had the opportunity to become friends with him, and we had a phenomenal relationship for, I'd say, like 2.5, 3 years. And he really, 1, showed me what was possible. 2, was credible when reinforcing my own thought process or decisions I was making. And 3, I guess, just showed me what all is possible, you know? And what I mean by that is when I was in the Marine Corps and I had the photo booth company, my goal was to make $15K a month. And when I hit 15K a month, I felt like I was on top of the world. And I didn't it was like the world is flat, right? I'm like, oh, there's another side.
Yeah.
And so when I hit that number, I was just like, this is the top.
I
like,
made it.
This is where everyone aims to get to, and I'm here.
Yeah.
Now what? And then having conversations with Sam, I was just like, what? I was
He's
like,
you need to make 15 grand a day.
Yeah.
A minute, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And it was just like, I was mind blown. And a lot of it came to do with like the whole gym operations thing. And I was like, one facility generates how much revenue? And I was like, how do you position, like, what do I need to do to position myself to do that? And then he tells me, and so then I strive for that. But the biggest thing that he did for me was opening my eyes to what is possible. And as we navigate through this thing called life, we are like horses with blinders on. All we see is what is in front of us.
Yeah.
And if we've never seen it, we don't know that it's there. And it takes something or someone to show us what is beyond the horizon of that blinder. And in that moment with that relationship, what it did was it opened expanded my blinders or the horizon to see what was possible. And then it's like, okay, 15K, that's cool. But now I need to navigate and strive towards how can I generate 50K in revenue?
Yeah.
And I want to say it's like the whole entrepreneurial thing, I would say, is borderline like sickness. Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, when is enough? And in all reality, it just gets to a point where it's like you're playing a game with yourself. And
totally,
because life doesn't necessarily change. It doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any worse. But what it does do is it gives you the opportunity to make an impact on other people.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel fortunate that I feel like blessed that I'm able to figure out what brings fulfillment at an earlier age rather than like when you're 70 or 60 and feel like it may be too late. And one thing that I've seen is with more resource comes opportunity to do something larger. And when you do something larger, then with that comes a team, and with a team is more people, and you're able to then elevate other people. And sort of like when ships are in dock, as the tide rises, so do all the ships.
Yeah.
So that's the cool part there. But yeah, showing what was possible.
Which is interesting, because I think what you mentioned and you touched on was how we have those blinders on, right? And I think we are programmed as a society to be like cattle.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just get in line, do yours, collect your check, right? It's the old rich dad, poor dad, rat race. And if you look, you met tens of thousands of people in your life, and then one got you to think differently, right? And he's the one who showed you, like, yeah, you're looking at it all wrong, man. There's more out there than what you could even see, but we're so programmed to just see basically what's in front of us, as opposed to, like you said, over that horizon. And it's special people like that bring that out in you, right? And it's twofold. It's somebody giving that to you. You have to receive it, right, and be open to it, and then you have to implement stuff. And it's amazing when you have people like that in your life. I say they bring you up, right? And true selfless people. I always say that we live in a very selfish world. Most people are more selfish than selfless. But when you meet those people that are just, right, like you say, Sam told you everything. Here's, like, I want you to be successful. I want you to have some of this. I want you to have the 50K, 100K.
Well, so check this out, man. He didn't necessarily say it like that. So it was more so through dialogue is how, like, so he showed me what is possible. Yeah. In an indirect manner, just from the way he lives and the conversations that we had.
Really?
And so it was, I guess me being mindful of what was going on, and our relationship, taking things for what they are at face value. And so he didn't necessarily tell me like, you know what, 15K, you should aim for 50. It was more so that's through the proximity of being close to him.
Yeah.
That was a solution or path that I put myself on through that relationship.
Yeah.
And I would say where that's relevant to anyone out there is birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah.
You hang out with 5 millionaires, you're bound to be the sixth.
Yeah.
Iron sharpens iron. How does that happen? Well, it's through the sheer influence of your presence and how you are as a person. Well, I may not like replicate everything that you do, but I'm going to take something away from you.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with if you hang out with 5 drunks, you're going to be the sixth. Yep. Why? You're not going to replicate everything that they do, but you're going to take tidbits of those 5 people. And if they're all alcoholics or they all go to the bar all the time, well, more than likely you're going to do something similar.
Yeah.
In that sense. And it's not them telling you like, hey, you need to drink more. You had 1 beer, you should have 4. It's just through the mere proximity of being around them that you will then take those things away and implement them yourself.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the huge values. And I would say he never directly told me, but it's like one of those things that just sort of rubbed off on me.
Yeah.
And in addition to things like that was having him be a soundboard. Hey, dude, this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's so valuable,
what
right?
are your
Like
thoughts?
just to be able to get that off your chest and just get some validation, like you mentioned, but have somebody at that level that you can give that, like bounce those ideas off of.
Yeah. And so I would say that was like number 2, beyond showing me what was possible, the validation thing. Like when I would tell him, hey man, this is what I'm thinking, what are your thoughts? He's like, that's awesome. Run it.
Yeah.
And because he's not pioneering what I'm doing, he's already walked through the path. It was like, oh, Sam said it, this is what I'm doing.
Gotcha.
And there's really no one that can be like, I don't think that's right. I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's like you get defensive because it's like you have no credibility in that space. So and as time went on and so on, as I share ideas and, hey, this is what I'm thinking, what are your thoughts? And as he validates what I'm thinking, I'm then realizing that our thought process and the way we're making decisions or operating, or the way I'm doing it, is very much in tune with how he operates.
Yeah.
The only difference is that we're at different chapters of life.
Yep.
Right. And that's one thing that always needs to be considered when having conversation or dialogue or relationship with mentor. It's not necessarily that they're better than you. It's just they're simply at a different chapter.
100%.
And with any book, it's like you can get to that chapter. You just have to go through the motions and navigate through the book that we call life. Yep. and get yourself to that chapter. So I say that he didn't necessarily teach me anything new, but he did give that validation.
Yeah.
And he did introduce what is possible. And I would say in that same light, having not known people of his caliber prior to him, the whole perception of someone who is a millionaire or multimillionaire is, for what I had perceived previously, not knowing anyone in that bracket, is that they're snooty or they're arrogant.
Yep.
And it's quite the opposite. I think they're the most humble, down to earth, nice, helping, supportive people that I've ever met in my life. And I would say it's in line with just having that mindset of abundance.
Yeah.
Like there's plenty for everyone to eat, and I'll help you where I can. At the same time, I could also see where they limit their exposure or accessibility to people, because there's people who will ask questions and then have no implementation.
Yeah.
Or they just expect a handout of some kind. And so it's like I can see both sides of that fence, but I would say those are the three main takeaways that I had from Sam, and I would say that he 100% had a significant impact on my life and really just changed the trajectory.
Totally.
Whether I would have gotten to where I'm at eventually, or he totally collapsed time and I'm where I'm at quicker than expected, but just enjoying the journey, and there's a lot more to do.
Yeah. And so I think you get to a point where eventually you'll be paying that forward, right? Now the student becomes the teacher.
Yeah.
Right. And so somewhere out there's somebody who's looking at Andrew Cruz and saying, how do I connect to that guy? Right. And at some point, God willing, that you're going to pay that forward, and you're going to give that to somebody else who is not there and maybe has that self-doubt, or they just need that push, right? Or just that little bit of guidance. And that's the beautiful thing, right? Is that you take it, you learned, you'll pay it forward, you'll give it to other people. And that's what this world's about, right? I think too many times people don't think like that, right? That's what makes you special. And that's what made Sam special. And that's what makes all these great people in this world, mentors out there that are willing to help you grow and are willing to be there for you without any expectation, right?
Yeah.
That takes a lot from a person, right? It really, really does. So I know you're into fitness, because, I'll open up my IG and I'm sitting there eating ice cream, and you're on your like 700th pull up, and I'm like, this damn guy's at the gym. So when you say the five people closest to you, right? Like I have to start hanging out with some fit people so I can get fit, instead of fat. But I know you're into fitness, right? Like it's always been part of your life, it seems like, or at least since the Marine Corps. I mean, you're in great shape. And so I feel like the gym is a natural thing for you, right? But how'd you get into opening a gym and going to the gym? Two different things.
Totally.
Right? They're like two different worlds. But now you're looking at getting into your third one. And so what was like 3 big mistakes you made in the beginning, right? Like when you look at when you started, you're like, from the first gym, you're like, I know not to do that again. You got a couple of things that maybe jump out at you where you're like, yeah, that was a dumb move, but I did it anyway, and that's what I learned. Like anything?
Yeah, as you're asking the question and providing that context, there's one thing that I would avoid doing, hands down, and that would be expecting that other people would know what to do without you telling them to do it.
They can't read your mind?
They can't read your mind. They can't read my mind. And also, my experiences are not other people's experiences.
Uh-huh.
So then
that's great, by the way. So can you elaborate on that? Because I think that's a great thing, is like elaborate more on what you said about people and what they do.
100%. So my experiences are not everyone else's experiences. So what may seem like a easy or simple thing for me to resolve or figure out, not assuming that someone else will have that same simple path to the solution, is one thing that must be avoided. And it ties in with make no assumptions.
Yep.
Assume nothing. Be specific and clear. Yeah.
Nothing.
The only time, and I was talking to one of my managers at the Ontario Ranch facility yesterday, he had asked, what was it? I know I'm not supposed to assume not one thing, but you did say that there's an exception for assumption. And what was it? And it happened to be something that we were talking about recently. And it was the one exception to assumption is giving someone the benefit of the doubt and assuming that they did not mean to do something maliciously. And from a leadership perspective, or when you're in a management role, which is a leadership role, and someone makes a mistake, understanding that I don't know not one person who wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to wreck today. I'm just going to totally blow it out of the water and suck. Like, no, I don't know. No one wakes up that way. No one starts a job that way.
They're not going to be hired by the camp.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Right.
And so there's an acronym, and this is a Marine Corps takeaway, that it's KISSA, KSSA.
Okay.
And when someone makes a mistake of some kind, big or small, K stands for knowledge. Did they know any better? The first S is system. So is our system flawed, or process, or the actual platform that we're utilizing, or the environment, is something messed up in that arena? The second S is skill. Are they just not good at doing X? But there's a caveat to that. If the person has done it once before well, then the question must be, if their life depended on it, would they have been able to execute that properly? And if the answer is no, then it's like, okay, well, then we need to invest more time or more energy into further developing that skill for that person in that role. But if the answer is yes, they've done it before, and if their life depended on it, they could do it again, but they chose not to this time, then it goes to A, attitude. Then it's an attitude problem. And having the ability to assume that it might be K, it might be knowledge, it might be the system, or it might be skill before it's an attitude problem is the best way to approach some friction or something that isn't going well in your operation. Because a big mistake would be to assume that they did that on purpose, and they just didn't care.
Yeah.
Right. So
they didn't wake up wanting to wreck the day.
Yeah. So that was the only exception to assumption.
Yeah.
But the one thing that tying back to the number one thing that I would avoid was making the assumption, and it's in good faith, because it's like, I feel like I can do this, so and so must be able to do this too. And when you make that assumption, although it's in good faith, and let's say they do not meet or exceed expectation, and then you're disappointed, well, whose fault is it really? I would say it's my fault.
Yeah.
Because I set that person up for failure, in a sense, because I assumed that their experience was my experience, or vice versa, and they would be able to just figure it out and make it happen. Where it could have been avoided by simply having some dialogue, cross-pollination, and seeing what their game plan is, and perhaps making some suggestion or some tweaks and this and that, and then execute. And the specific example that I'm referring to is when I went from one location to two location, because it was in a short period, because location 1, August 2020, location 2, January 21, I assumed that a certain person was going to be able to figure out a way to manage both, because they did really well at one. And when that didn't happen, we had to have a conversation that they didn't necessarily appreciate. But it was a conversation that needed to take place, because things weren't where they needed to be. Yeah. And the end result was I had to come up with the solution, and it was really no hard feelings in that sense. But the learning lesson was, my experiences are not their experiences. Yep. So that's where my market value comes into play in regards to creating the solution for something. Yeah. And although they say they could do it, then it should have been on me from that point to then ask how. What is the plan specifically?
Yeah. Dude, this is so funny. This is like an intervention, by the way. Like, because all of the stuff you're saying is the stuff that I struggle with, right? And then I get frustrated, because I'm like, I don't understand. But it was just, ultimately, you have to look in the mirror And you have to realize, did you give good direction? Were you clear, right? Like, did they know, were they best equipped to do what you asked them to do? And so when you said read my mind, I'm like, oh, I feel like everybody should be able to read my mind.
Right.
And that's so far from the case. So you do have to be very clear and direct and firm when you're talking with anybody. Otherwise, really, you just have to look in the mirror.
Yep.
Because it winds up being a you problem, right? Some people say there's no bad employees, there's bad managers.
Yep.
There's bad owners. And so when you get to a certain point, like, you're right, you're the leader, right? And you have to lead, and the way your team navigates different situations is a reflection of your leadership.
100%.
Right? So that's so interesting that you said that, because I think a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs and people out there, especially when you're a go, right? Like you're a high D, you're a driver, right? Like you make things happen, that sometimes you'll forget the details, right? You're like, yeah, that's right. I wanted it done this way, or I asked you to do this thing, but obviously you should have done that thing first. All right. Like, come on, who didn't know that? Because you knew it in your head.
Yeah.
Just, you didn't get that information out. Right. Like,
yeah.
So that's funny.
And that's two of the 4 pillars: leadership and communication.
Yeah.
Because we're within communication, it's talking to senior leadership, it's talking to people below you, people talking beside you, but then also sales.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an all encompassing thing, and so that was the big takeaway there. Yeah. And then systems and processes and structure, going from one location to two locations, and in any kind of business. Now
you're going to throw a third one in there.
Yeah. So
you're going to be.
So that's where the third pillar, that structure, and then within structure is the systems and processes. In order to scale any business, you must have systems and processes, because we are one person, right? So in order for someone to be able to do something to expectation without you being there must be systems and processes.
Yeah.
And it can work out to a certain extent, not having systems and processes and just shooting from the hip because they know what to do. But what happens when when the time comes and they pivot and go in a different direction?
Yeah.
How long will it take to get someone up to speed to be able to know how to do things, and you, the individual, not have to circle back to then re-show how to do these things. So that's the value of like systems and processes, but like simplifying them to a granular
to each position.
And I would say that came from the Marine Corps background, man. And one thing, as I've exited the Marine Corps, one thing that they said this while I was in the Marine Corps and like other senior leadership, that a lot of the methodologies and things that we do in the military are because that's what works. Fortune 500 companies, this is what they do.
Yeah.
And when your entire adult life is in the military, you hear it and you're just like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, what are you trying to sell me on right now?
Like you're trying to get you to drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, you want me to drink more Kool-Aid? I don't know. It's like, it sounds like a half truth. But as I exit and as I experience what I would say is the private sector, it is 100% spot on. Because I spent a total of like 7 years in the aviation supply world. So it was like supply chain management, logistics, and I spent about 11 years in the recruiting environment. And systems and processes, mindset, leadership, and communication all play pivotal roles in those areas. And the reason why I know how operating procedures should look like is because there's a SOP, or the standard operating procedure for everything in the military. That's how 18, 19-year-olds are fixing F-18 fighter jets.
Yeah.
How else would a 19-year-old know how to fix a fighter jet if it wasn't for systems and processes and standard operating procedures?
So true.
So it's like these things that just go over the wave top, and many, I would say, service members may not even identify the importance of the environment that we're operating within until perhaps later in life.
Yeah.
We can lean heavy on our military experience.
Totally.
Because now it's like, okay, circling back to the systems and processes, how can I make them so simple to where it eliminates variance? And I know from the supply world, a lot of the methodology, I believe it came from Toyota. Toyota has what's called like the TPS, Toyota Performance System, or Toyota Production System.
Okay.
And the whole idea is, how do you increase scale and reduce variance? How do you do more without compromising quality? And that's by creating systems and processes that are very granular to where you cannot mess this up. Yeah. And the whole ideology is, if Joe Soto were to not come in tomorrow, can someone do what Joe Soto does? And if the answer is no, then that means the systems and processes need to be revisited, so that way they know what Joe Soto does on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and then how
you're making me not feel well, you're making me not feel needed. I feel like they need me here. If Joe Soto's not here, everything will no, I'm just kidding. They don't need me here. They're just like, yeah, we're good when you're not here, Joe. And
that's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing, right?
You've done well there.
Yeah, it's good that the team, is awesome, and you need all of that support. And there's just so many moving pieces, right? There's so many moving pieces, and having those 4 pillars, I think, is critical, because you need those 4. You have to be solid on those 4 principles or those pillars, right? And then you need to get that. Everybody else has to be on the same page with those. So it's a big thing, especially when you're running multiple businesses. So super exciting stuff, man. I'm grateful for you to be here with me. I'm looking forward to having you back. Maybe we get you back and have you talk about your 6th, 7th, and 8th gym, or maybe when you're doing your different modules and stuff like that. Like, it's been a blessing to see you grow, and watch you from afar, right? Like, we don't talk a lot, and this has kind of been super cool, to get to know you better and to see how you've done so much and how you've grown, and you're a great dad, and it's really cool. It's cool to see the growth, man. And I know it's not easy. I know you're busting your ass out there every single day, even when you're going and walking the dog. I see that too. But you're very consistent. You do it the right way. You got a great attitude, man. And I wish you continued success, continued blessings to you and your family and your kids, man. And I'm honored that you came here and spent some time with us, man.
No, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm humbled the fact that I was reached out to and invited to come out here. I love getting out there and running my mouth, and hopefully I can positively impact someone out there. And that's, at the end of the day, that's the most fulfilling thing. I know Eleanor Roosevelt had said a quote, and it was about Marines in specific. It was people will spend an entire lifetime wondering whether they made an impact in the world, and Marines don't have that problem.
Yeah.
And I would say that also applies to many other people, I would say, in the entrepreneurial space, because you truly are making an impact.
Yep.
And I would say it's how you frame it will then dictate whether you feel like you're making impact. Because I would say without having any care for photography, but having a photo booth rental company, I would say that we are there for special occasion, and we are part of the expression of joy in bringing happiness to an event via entertainment, which then gives purpose and fulfillment to the photo booth rental company. And the same goes with the Camp Transformation Center. It's large group fitness classes. I'm a guy who's traditionally always just gone to the gym with 1 or 2 dudes and we lift.
Yeah.
So even though I may not be the audience of who we bring into our facility, I've had the opportunity and good fortune of meeting so many people that don't necessarily, whether it's they need the social accountability, or they simply need direction or guidance, or they've never worked out ever in their life, or now they're facing some sort of medical XYZ, and if something doesn't change, it's going to get bad.
Yeah.
And having the opportunity to see someone who may have been depressed and lacks self-esteem to then have a life-changing transformation and now is a positive, go-lucky person. Someone who has lost 100 pounds. And
crazy.
Even though I'm not the person who is directly doing or assisting their effort, having the opportunity to facilitate the process and simply being a part of their journey is what brings fulfillment and provides purpose in what it is that we're doing awesome. with the Camp Transformation Center. So it's like that's how I frame it, and that's how I look at it. And really, I feel like everyone has the opportunity with whatever business, career, role that you're doing to frame it in a position that makes what you're doing fulfilling because it has purpose and you're impacting people in a positive light. And it for sure extends to mortgage and home loans and real estate, you know?
It's an extension of life and how you live every day, man. And I just think, you know, we're blessed. We're blessed to be in a position to help other people and to change their lives on whatever level. And I think that's not just like, I feel like that's on every level.
Yeah.
And people miss that, right? Like it's your interaction with the guy at the gas station or at the store, like all of those moments, like, dude, you don't know what that's going to impact somebody, right? But you just have to always have that attitude. You have to, like I said, you got to bring your A game on everything, right? It's the way you do anything is the way you do everything.
100%.
You know, so this has been cool, man. I appreciate it. Super grateful for you, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Excellent. Thank you.
Cool, man.